Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this virtual look of the Ancient Ghosts of Norwich tour. My name is Regan, and I will be your guide. This tour is sponsored by the Last Green Valley and the Norwich Historical Society. Please join us as we talk about ghostly legends from historic Norwich Town. We're standing here on the Norwich Town Green, located in the heart of the Norwich Town Historic District. The European settlers to Norwich built their homes around the Norwich Town Green. In the 18th century, Norwich was a prominent manufacturing society, boasting numerous mills and factories powered by Norwich's three rivers, the Yantic, the Thames, and the Setauket. Norwich was a prominent seaport and a thriving industrial center. By 1774, Norwich was the 12th largest city in the colonies, boasting over 7,000 people. Many people aren't aware that Norwich, Connecticut almost became another Salem, Massachusetts. In 1684, Reverend James Fitch, who was the first minister here in Norwich at the first meeting house, showed good sense when a member of his congregation showed signs of demonic possession. The young girl exhibited similar behavior that the young girls in Salem showed 8 years prior. She was rolling on the ground, had fits, and was speaking out in different languages and crying out as if tormented by invisible hands. The girl's family was already blaming witchcraft for her illness. Reverend James Fitch refused to participate in a witch hunt. Instead, he persuaded the family to allow him to come and pray with the young girl. He successfully convinced the young girl that God would have mercy on her soul, and after a few days of prayer and psalms, the young girl was cured. On the other side of the meeting house sits an adorable mustard color home owned by Dr. Philip Turner. The home was built in the 17th century, and legend states that Dr. Turner kept a skeleton in his home office by the name of Jock. Jock supposedly killed himself in his jail cell. Legend has it that a girl rejected Jock's advances and he responded by shooting her. Norwich historian Francis Calkins gives authenticity to the story. Quote, "The Turner House in Norwich stood against a background of rocks overshadowed with trees. The office nearby was one of the noted localities of the place, regarded by children with a kind of shivering admiration as containing a secret closet where an anatomy, a skeleton known as Old Jock's bones, was kept." Dr. Philip Turner was Surgeon General in the Eastern Department during the Revolutionary War, and he was the first known surgeon to tie the femoral artery in the colonies. He died in New York in 1815. We are now entering the old Norwich Town Colonial Burying Ground. You can enter the Colonial Burying Ground via the gates on Old Cemetery Lane or on East Town Street. The Old Norwich Town Burying Ground is one of the earliest burying grounds located here in Norwich. We're standing here beside the grave of Hannah Waterman King Arnold, mother of the infamous traitor Benedict Arnold. Hannah was known as a woman of piety, patience, and virtue. There are numerous interesting things that happen here at Hannah Arnold's grave. She is known to have a secret admirer that leaves her candles, votives, and flowers. In addition, there is a sign next to her grave that someone has planted flowers. However, a more ghostly tale that occurs at Hannah Arnold's grave is every Halloween at midnight, a figure wearing a colonial officer's uniform descends from a white ethereal horse and limps to her grave. He stands there for a few moments and then disappears into the mist. Many people believe that this figure is her son, Benedict Arnold, coming to pay his respects to his mother. Does he come to beg her forgiveness or tell her side of the story? We may never know. To my right is the beautiful headstone of Deacon Simon Huntington. Deacon Simon Huntington was one of the 35 European settlers here in Norwich. He was buried here in 1706, and this is the oldest headstone here in the burying ground. Nearby Deacon Simon Huntington's grave is the headstone for his grandson, also named Simon Huntington. Tragically, this young Simon died at an early age. He was only 21 years old when he passed away. He was mowing in the meadows and was bit on the ankle by a venomous snake. He was taken back to his home located on the Norwich Town Green and passed away only a few hours later. Behind me is the Huntington family crypt, which houses the final remains of generations of the Huntington family. One of those individuals that is here entombed in the crypt is Jedediah Huntington. He was a brigadier general in the Revolutionary War. His home is still standing today and is located on East Town Street. Jedediah Huntington fought in the Battle of Bunker Hill. His wife, Faith Trumbull Huntington, daughter of Governor Jonathan Trumbull, who was the Revolutionary War governor of Connecticut, witnessed the horrors of the Battle of Bunker Hill and the siege of Boston. Faith suffered from melancholia, which has probably been diagnosed today as bipolar disorder. After facing the horrors of Bunker Hill and seeing the soldiers suffer, Faith tragically took her own life outside of the city of Boston. She is not buried here in the Huntington family tomb. She is likely buried in an unmarked grave outside the city of Boston. Behind me is the beautiful and peaceful Lathrop Meadows. This 18-acre meadow was deeded in 1907 to the city of Norwich with the stipulation that it be kept open and free for the public to use. The word Lathrop is a variation of the last name Lathrop. The early founders of Norwich did not regard this site as lovingly as we do today. According to an account published in 1659, it was, and I quote, "a dark and dolorous swamp, the haunt of wolves and venomous serpents, from whence it is said, often at nightfall, low howling issued and phosphorescent lights were seen, very fearful and appalling to the early planters." In fact, it was here in the Lathrop Meadows where young Simon Huntington was bit by the rattlesnake on his foot. Because of this, there was a bounty placed on all snakes and wolves here in the meadow, and they were eventually eradicated. The only thing you have to fear walking in the meadow today is the occasional dog poop, so just watch your step and enjoy the beautiful and bucolic meadow. Behind me is the tomb of Martha and Samuel Huntington. The Norwich Historical Society restored this tomb back in 2003. There is a video on the Norwich Historical Society's website detailing the restoration of the tomb and the artifacts that were discovered in the tomb by then state archaeologist Nick Bellantoni. Samuel Huntington was originally apprenticed as a cooper, but soon found that he preferred reading books to making barrels. He studied law under the tutelage of Reverend Ebenezer Devotion in Scotland, Connecticut. Samuel moved to Norwich from his hometown of Scotland, Connecticut in the mid-1700s and opened up his own law practice. Shortly thereafter, he married Reverend Ebenezer Devotion's daughter, Martha. Samuel Huntington was a patriot. He participated in the Continental Congress and signed many of this country's founding documents, such as the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. Many people claim that Samuel Huntington was in fact our first president of the United States. Samuel Huntington was president in Congress assembled under the Articles of Confederation. During the Revolutionary War, the nation was governed under the Articles of Confederation. George Washington became the first president under the Constitution, which is the governing document that our country knows today. Spirit, tell us your story.
I cannot help but feel at peace as I rest here for eternity in the town which became my home so many years ago. And yet I cannot fathom how I, a former cooper's apprentice, became so deeply engaged in the course of events that shaped the founding of this new nation. These perplexities are humbling to me. And I suppose that my successes in life may be attributed to a single innate desire, the desire to learn. I never did receive the privilege of a gentleman's education, but I never balked at the chance to acquire and read new books, or to study new disciplines seemingly beyond my grasp. Knowledge self-learned became my biggest ally, and it has served me well. And for that, I cannot give enough thanks to the minister Ebenezer Devotion, for his wisdom, for his books, but perhaps most importantly, for the woman who would become my wife, my dearest Martha. And yet, no amount of books or knowledge could have prepared me for the monumental tasks of public service to which I was called, in the midst of a war that many of us were certain was to be lost. Unconscionable that myself and 55 other men would sign a Declaration of Independence. Such an act was treason in the eyes of our British occupiers. One can only imagine the fates we all would have suffered had we not been successful in our endeavor. It would not have been illness to have claimed my life, but rather the gallows. This cause truly tested our lives, our fortunes, and our resolve more than we could have ever imagined. But in the end, I would change nothing. I love my country, and I will always love my country.
Behind me is the home of Deacon Simon Huntington. Parts of the home date back to the 17th century. In the colonial period, the home was used as a tavern and a space to store munitions. This was the home where young Simon Huntington was brought and where he ultimately passed away following the snake bite that he got in the meadows. A previous owner of the home was shaving one morning in the mirror. When he knelt his head to wash the shaving cream off of his face, he looked up in the mirror and saw a young figure dressed in colonial era clothing staring back at him. The owner of the home said the words, "Simon," and the figure disappeared. Thank you so much for joining us on this virtual look of the Antient Ghosts of Norwich tour. We hope to be able to host this tour in person in 2021. If you're interested in learning more about colonial era Norwich, please visit Walk Norwich and check out the Benedict Arnold walking trail. Until then, thank you so much and happy Walktober.